by building it in the process and mapping where we stand socially, politically, morally, in terms of all of the negative structures of our society, as well as all of the privileges that we enjoy, as well as all of the well-being that we have, because they're all there. And what's required is sifting and sorting through these in a meaningful, coherent way. So I talk about, after talking about gratitude, I talk about the world on our shoulders. And I talk about all the things we're responsible for. And what I want to stress is that we have dozens of connections, and that part of living a fully human life is taking responsibility for those connections and taking responsibility for the shape of the society we live in. And then I go on in another chapter to talk about taking responsibility for ourselves. A very difficult question. How is it, if we believe in science and we believe in determinism, the determinism of science, how is it we can also believe that we are free to affect and make changes? How do we reconcile these two things? A constantly confused and difficult question. I have always found that talking to people to be the thing that people simply understand the least and are most puzzled about. How can I be both free and unfree at the same time? In any case, my chapter in which I explore that is called Taking Responsibility for Ourselves. Because we both have to acknowledge the forces beyond our control and acknowledge the forces within our control. And I won't do any detail about that. If you want to ask me about it in a couple of minutes when I'm finished, I'll be happy to talk about it. Now, those are some of the themes of this Living Without God project. Other themes including, as I've already mentioned, choosing to know. Why do some people choose to know? What does it mean to choose to know? How do we understand the world around us? What does it mean to face death? How do we do that? How do we live and face death without becoming overwhelmed by it, or without repressing it, or one after another of a dozen different dodges? And finally, my final question, is the final Kant question. The final Kant question is, what may I hope? And I think I'll save that for further discussion, because I want to now stop my presentation, and I sense there's a little bit of feedback in what I've said, so let's stop here, pause here, and take your comments and questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you refer to progress, what progress are you referring to? I see lots of progress.
Sure.
In a lot of things.
I'm referring to the old myth of progress with a capital P. The idea of progress that put civilizational progress and political progress and social progress all unfolding together, along with the progress of education and the progress of the people abandoning religion and the progress of democracy. Is that enough for you? Or in other words, there has been in Western societies this sense, particularly as people could point to scientific and technological change, that there, look at that, life is getting better. And it's linking the scientific, technological change, economic development, education, secularization, democratization, the great idea of the Enlightenment that sort of dominated Western civilization ever since Frederick the Great in 1746, when he talked about enlightenment. So I see a lot of progress too. I see a lot of regress and a lot of threat and a lot of danger. And the real picture, as we look around, is not one of a civilizational getting better. It's something much more complicated and mixed, and some people see it very negatively. So does that?
Yeah, I think so.
But part of what I'm saying is that the Western civilization pushed God out the front door in many respects and had progress in the back door as, what is your faith? What do you believe in? Where are things going? What's happening? And I think people would say, in all these respects, the world is getting better. Anybody here grew up with that idea? Yeah. It's one thing that's for sure is a lot of us grew up with that idea, but very few of our kids or our children's children will grow up with that idea. Something has changed. That's a civilizational attitude change. The environmental problems, just pick those. Ecological problems caused by all of that scientific, technological, economic progress are waiting to be solved. Yes?
I have two questions for you. One, have you been to China?
No.
Second question to you is, have you done any research what civilization they do in China compared to in the United States?
You mean in particular what about?
Like about religion, or if they don't believe in God, or they believe in Buddhism, or different religion. Can you give me any words for me if you want?
I'll actually give you the words of John,
repeat the question?
behind the camera. Or John could give you his words.
We didn't hear the
Oh, okay. The question was about China.
China.
The question was about China, and I could just refer the... John, what about progress in China, and what about religion in China?
Well, the idea is they pushed religion out of the front door, but the back door, there's the idea of progress, but there's also the idea of money, the worship of money, and self-interest. And that's sort of what dominates in Chinese culture right now. Like, they would go to Buddhist temples to pray, not because they're real Buddhists, but because to pray for fortune, personal fortune, right? So, yeah, there's not really any moral, ethical value that's there. That's sort of empty, and I think that's where we have to step in and insert something new in place of religion.
Well, the Chinese have never had a sort of one god religion sort of thing ever.
Right. Nothing like
Confucius was not really a god. So they come from a different sort of background.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm assuming there's some difference between Canadian and American audiences. Is there a question that always pops up when you're talking to a U.S. audience? Something that really concerns them?
Well, I'll tell you, talking with U.S. audiences around the election, at the time of the publication of my book, which is now, that was the past couple of months, the questions I've gotten into very naturally and very easily have had to do with the church-state question. I knew we would come back to that. The church-state question, specifically, President-elect Obama on the 2nd of July proposed to continue the faith-based social service initiative of President Bush, in which large sums of money were given to churches, church groups, in order to carry out social services, which is immensely popular in the United States. So the question, one question that would come up is, why is it that Democrats, which have always been seen as the more secular party, why is it they've moved towards embracing religion? There are other issues. I'll give you another one, which I wrote about in the Denver Post at the time of the Denver convention of the Democratic Party. For the first time, Democrats had an interfaith